Thank you very much for letting us opening the lightning talk session here at FOSDEM. So I'm Erik Josefsson from Electronic Frontier Foundation. I'm European Affairs Coordinator, and this is Edan Katz that will speak for the last 7 minutes of this presentation. He's EFF's new International Affairs Director. I would just like to touch on two privacy-related dossiers and then talk a bit about intellectual property-related political decision processes. And the first one is the Data Retention Directive. I think you know it was adopted by the European Parliament 2 years ago. It is a new way of looking at some basic principles of law, that you are innocent until the opposite is proven. That this is now being maybe broken by saving data from all your telecommunications interactions with each other. And this has huge implications on, of course, privacy, human rights, but also on the technical level, where I hope that you as technicians can be helpful and engaged in understanding what is going on here and what will happen with basic information infrastructures in Europe. And this is a quote from the responsible politician that was the rapporteur for this directive 1 week before the vote in the parliament. He basically said, we don't know anything about this. It turns out that 2 years later, the Commission is also having problems to understand how they are going to implement this directive. There's a working group, the Recital 14 working group, that the Commission has set up, where they talk about the implementation, and there are many, many questions regarding this directive. On the legal side, we have then, in this implementation process, one of the most successful organizations that is trying to make sure, or trying to stop this implementation, is the German Working Group Against Data Retention, the AK-Vorrat. Then they have recently filed a class action lawsuit against the implementation proposal by the German government, and they're complaining at the Institutional Court. And this will have implications for far-reaching, far beyond Germany, so I encourage you to follow this process and interact with your politicians and your government on what this, if the implementation legislation is rejected, what effects it could have in your country. The second proposal here regarding privacy is the PNR proposal. So when data retention is supposed to save all your telecommunications data, this proposal is aiming at making a profile over each citizen's travel behavior, starting with your flight travels. So, and for criminal or law enforcement purposes, all of you will have a profile so that you can be checked in case you would be interesting to look at. There's also a very important technical aspect here that I want to mention. This personal name record will be, it's a part of the booking system that it's a global network. It was really, until the mid-90s, larger than internet. So it's a big mainframe system that is still mainly based on the same old system as maybe 30, 40 years it has been just running. So the passenger name records are created when you make a booking, and that are then being processed by these CRSs, the computerized reservation systems. And there are 4 major companies working on that. One of them is European, and that is Amadeus. Right, and the PNR record, you know, when you make a booking, it contains a lot of information, but also from this design of the system, there's a lot of free text fields, and basically a PNR cannot be deleted. Then the Commissioner Frattini's proposal is to set up institutions in all member states that will take care of this data and make this profile per individual per citizen. And this passenger information unit, it has some similarities with the Department of Homeland Security, and there's a technical issue here how this information is stored or transferred if it's not basically just they are logged in. And those records will be stored for 13 years. And then here comes the important technical aspect that in the political debate about this proposal, everybody says, of course, sensitive information should not be there, like trade union membership. But if you look at the specification, what you want to store is then in the proposal you have 19 items. 2 of them, if you look closely at them, will then show that the things like a trade union membership will probably be in this profile. So with the things like this in place, if we would have a return of Richelieu, that is famous for chopping off heads during the French Revolution, he said, give me 6 lines written by the most honorable of men, and I will find an excuse in them to hang him. I wonder what he would do with the PNR records and data retention. And the correct answer to that question is then what is in our political tradition, a central concept of organizing our political institutions so that when bad or incompetent rulers come into power, they don't make too much damage. It's a bit like system design. How do you prevent users from making damage unintentionally, and how do you protect yourself from malicious attacks? So that was for on the privacy front, and then what I've been doing lately is following the things in the European Parliament quite closely, and just to mention 2 reports here. The Bono report, maybe you've heard of that, and the problem here is that these reports are unrelated. They are about culture and not about intellectual property, really. But in these processes, you see agenda items from the copyright industry inserted in these these reports. So it's about filtering in the internet. Here's an interesting one for you, the Grassamore report. For some reason, the open source community poses an unprecedented threat, and we have to take care of that and eradicate counterfeit and piracy. And this very aggressive language, we have to find a way to communicate our constituencies' concerns to the politicians involved. And now Eden is going to be more concrete in what EFF's projects, how.
Thank you, Eric, for sharing your talk with me. I'm the new International Affairs Director with the Electronic Frontier Foundation, and really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you. To build off of where Eric left off, the Grassamore report is, in particular, a strategy for culture in the European agenda for culture in a globalizing world. And I pose to you the question as to whether or not you can participate in deciding what that culture is. And I think there's an opportunity to do that, and the EFF is supportive of that and would like to encourage you to not let the politicians only with small private interests communicate with them in order to decide what the European agenda will be in the digital world, in a globalizing world, but for your voice to be heard as well. IPRED 2 is IP Enforcement Directive. The offenses, the idea behind this comprehensive strategy that Eric began to lay out and has been following in detail and has done important work here at the Commission. The point is to increase deterrence and the ability for there to be people scared by criminal offenses, ratchet up the offenses for copyright infringement, and therefore people will stop doing that. Coming from the United States, I can share that that has not worked. The No Electronic Theft Act, which was passed in 1998, contains some of the same ideas and has been a failure in terms of deterrence. There may be something else going on. Wrong way. This is actually what it was adopted by Parliament, which includes the fact that focusing these provisions and the criminalization of copyright on obtaining a commercial advantage. This is recognizable as set up warehouses and illicit networks that feed off of unauthorized copies. But the concern is actually in seeing whether or not how far this extends. And I think in that question, why is it not working? In that question, there's one amendment that was actually stopped through the efforts of a coalition of FFII and Buick and Edlida and EFF together helped stop this part of the provision, the amendment that you should pay attention to, which expands beyond this commercial advantage to basically everyone. We can go and talk in particular later, given the time constraints, but this language actually tries to expand it so that even peer-to-peer file sharing on a very minor basis of works that are combined, both copyrighted and public domain, can also be captured in that. And this is oriented towards the ISPs. And so there's a strategy that we should become aware of, that you should participate in, and your opportunity to participate is in communicating with your politicians, those politicians that you voted for. Ask them, because the member states are the ones that are part of this process in deciding. The Creative Content Online is one of the consultations that is coming out of the Info Society DG, and this actually asks questions also about ISP filtering, but also about DRM and interoperability. And if we look under the hood, we see that there's actually a plan being laid out to support certain aspects like the robots, changes to the robots TXT file to allow search engines to filter through that through copyrighted content and make sure that that stuff does not become available. And the consultation till the February 29th encourage individuals and organizations to look at this consultation and try to participate. The DVB, CPCM, this is another part of the strategy, deep in the layers. In broadcast TV, the implementation of DRM, there's a question posed to Europeans about the impact of DRM and the experience of DRM, and whether or not we should have a digital television future that includes that kind of content control. And that's part of this entire strategy, and I'm sort of trying to go through that to, we're talking about all the developments in the open source software world. There's also developments taking place in the policy world that you need to be aware of that are actually going to affect the way that you can do your work. And EFF would like to support that, would like to be in contact with you and become and encourage you to actually bring these discussions to your member states, to your individual countries. And EFF, in coordination and collaboration with others, is trying to is hoping to set an example and facilitate that kind of effort. Thanks for your time, and hopefully talk to you later.